Grace Robinson froze in the hallway, the clean scent of lavender detergent still clinging to her sleeves. Somewhere beneath the marble floors of the buffet estate, a cry broke the silence, soft, stifled, and aching. It wasn't a sound meant for hearing. It was a sound meant for heaven. Her laundry basket thudded to the floor. She followed the sound to the narrow door at the end of the corridor, bolted, sealed. A locked basement. Her hand trembled on the knob. Something deep within her, soul or instinct, she couldn't tell, warned her to turn away. But the cry came again. She dropped to her knees, pounding on the wood with open palms. "Hello? Can you hear me?" No answer. Not from the room. Not from the house. Only silence, thick and suffocating, pressing against her as if the mansion itself conspired to keep the secret buried. Her fingers scrambled through the drawer in the hallway. She found the emergency key. The lock clicked open with a sound far too soft for what lay beneath. The air hit her first, damp, heavy, the scent of rust and something more ancient. She descended into the dark. There, huddled in a corner, was Cody Buffet, the billionaire's 7-year-old son. His small body shook with sobs, his face streaked with grime and terror. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. She knelt in the dust and gathered him into her arms. "I've got you," she whispered, rocking him like her mother once rocked her through childhood storms. "I've got you. You're safe now." But even as the words left her lips, she felt a lie inside them, because someone was watching. She looked up toward the staircase and met the eyes of Elizabeth Lancaster, Chase Buffet's fiancée. Impeccable, still, and smiling. That smile didn't belong to someone surprised. It belonged to someone satisfied. In that moment, Grace understood. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't neglect. This was a message. And somewhere behind that smile was a promise of what would come next. Before we get into the story, let me ask you for one small favor. Hit the subscribe button, like and share this story so this channel can keep telling stories that matter. Now let's dive straight into the story. The doctor left with polite nod and a gentle warning. He'll be fine. Just needs rest, water, and comfort. Poor kid's shaken up, but no injuries. Grace sat in the hallway, wringing the hem of her shirt, still coated in dust from the basement. Her heart hadn't stopped pounding since she carried Cody out of that cold darkness. But now it was a different kind of fear. Elizabeth Lancaster stood across the foyer, perfectly composed in cream silk and pearls, her voice as smooth as her lipstick. "I think what we have here is a misunderstanding," she said sweetly, placing a hand on Chase Buffet's shoulder. Chase blinked, barely awake, still in his work clothes. "Wait, you're saying Cody sleepwalked into the basement?" "Children do strange things," Elizabeth smiled, her tone indulgent, like she was correcting a waitress. And Grace, bless her heart, she panicked. Grace stood. That boy was locked in. Elizabeth's eyes slid over to her. "Sharp, are you sure, Grace?" she asked gently, like a mother scolding a child. "You've been under a lot of pressure lately. Long hours, no time off. It's easy for the imagination to get carried away." Cody, curled up on the couch, flinched. His small fingers gripped the blanket tightly. "Cody," Grace said softly, "you remember, don't you?" The boy looked up at her, then turned his face away. Elizabeth didn't even look at him, just adjusted her necklace and smiled. A smile that never reached her eyes. Grace swallowed hard, her chest burning. "Lord, what am I supposed to do? What kind of evil wears silk and smiles?" The staff moved quietly in the background, eyes down. No one spoke. No one challenged her. Elizabeth's power didn't come from shouting. It came from how everyone else went silent. Grace wanted to scream. She wanted to fight. Instead, she prayed. God, open his eyes. Let Chase see the truth. Protect that little boy. Please, don't let me be the only one who knows something is deeply, deeply wrong. Maybe you should take a few days off, Grace, Elizabeth cooed, brushing invisible lint from Chase's suit jacket. Clear your head. But Chase looked between them, uncertain. Grace has always been reliable. Cody trusts her. Elizabeth's smile twitched. Of course, she said slowly. But even the most loyal servants have breaking points. Cody coughed softly. His eyes flicked toward Grace, pleading. Terrified, Grace met his gaze. I'm not going anywhere, she said quietly. Not while he needs me. Elizabeth finally turned to look at her, and for just a split second, the mask slipped. The eyes that met Grace's were not confused. They were not kind. They were calculating, and full of quiet rage. Grace's breath caught in her throat. She'd just drawn a line in the sand, and Elizabeth Lancaster was not the kind of woman who tolerated lines. The basement felt colder now. Grace stood at the top of the stairs, her hand on the light switch, heart pounding. She hadn't come back since the night she found Cody, but something kept tugging at her spirit, a whisper she couldn't shake. She clicked on the light and descended. The air was damp, still, like the place itself was holding its breath. Dust motes danced in the single overhead bulb. Grace moved slowly, eyes scanning every inch. She didn't know what she was looking for, just that something was off. Then she saw it. On the far wall, low to the ground scratches. Small, uneven, desperate, like tiny fingers had clawed against the concrete. She knelt down. Her throat tightened. Right beside the scratches, barely hidden behind a support beam, was a torn scrap of fabric, soft blue cotton. She held it up. Cody's pajamas. Her eyes moved toward the crates in the corner. Something peeked out from behind them. She reached in. A stuffed fox. Worn. Beloved. Its button eye half missing. Oh, baby, she whispered, cradling it in her palm. She stood and froze. Near the base of the stairs, pressed into a patch of drying dust, a single shoe print. Small. Unmistakable. Cody's. Not old. Not dusty. Fresh. She backed away slowly, her heart pounding with a new kind of dread. This wasn't the first time. He'd been down here before. Grace pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. Jesus, how long has this been going on? That night, after dinner, she found Cody alone in the playroom. His knees were pulled to his chest, the fox clutched tightly in his arms. He didn't look up when she entered. She sat on the rug beside him. I found him, she said softly, brushing the fox's ears. He was hiding. Cody didn't move. Can I ask you something? She whispered. When you were in the basement, did someone put you there? He was quiet for a long time. Then, in a voice barely louder than a breath, he said, She told me Daddy doesn't need me anymore. Grace's chest cracked open. She said he has her now, Cody whispered. And she said if I was good, I'd disappear like I'm supposed to. Tears filled Grace's eyes. She pulled him close, rocking him gently. God, please. This child is not disposable. He's not invisible. He's yours. She held him like that until he fell asleep. But the peace didn't last. The next morning, Chase found a drawer of Cody's toys dumped in his office. Grace, Elizabeth said lightly, I think we're seeing signs of obsession. I worry she's becoming too attached. It's not healthy. Chase frowned, confused, unsure. Grace said nothing, but her gut twisted. The whispers had started. A war was coming, and she was being painted as the villain. Grace had never been the snooping type, but evil wears masks, and Elizabeth Lancaster's mask was starting to crack. It began with a slip, a misdelivered envelope left on the kitchen counter. Most of the staff ignored mail addressed to the Buffet family, But Grace saw the name on the return label, E. Carter. Her breath caught. Elizabeth's full name was Elizabeth Lancaster. Or was it? The envelope was empty. Just a handwritten note with one line. It's starting again. Thought you should know. Grace folded the letter and slipped it into her apron, heart pounding. That night, long after the mansion quieted, she opened her laptop. Eliza Carter. She searched the name with shaking fingers. At first, nothing. Then a hit. A scanned article from an old society page. Wealthy New York widower mourns child's tragic fall. A photo showed a familiar face, younger, blonder, but unmistakable. Eliza Carter. Another link, archived in French. Millionaire's son hospitalized under suspicious circumstances. Same woman, different name, same smile. Grace's stomach turned. There were no charges, no official claims, just tragedies wrapped in silence and money. A pattern emerged like a stain spreading beneath water. She chose powerful men, lonely, grieving, or distracted. She became indispensable. Then the child would suffer, then disappear emotionally, physically, socially. And when things got too loud, she vanished. She's done this before, Grace thought, and now she's doing it again. Here, with Cody. Grace sat in the dark, the screen lighting her face. Her hands were cold, her spirit heavy. She turned away from the screen and bowed her head. Lord, give me wisdom. Give me courage. If no one else will fight for this child, I will. But I can't do this alone. Show me what to do. When she looked back up, the browser tab flickered and then froze. A message popped up. Session timed out. Grace's chest tightened. She tried to reload the page, but the Wi-Fi dropped entirely. Down the hall, a floorboard creaked. She closed the laptop and moved quietly to the door. The hallway was empty. Still, too still. The next morning, Elizabeth floated into the kitchen, hair freshly curled, a soft cashmere sweater draped over her shoulders. "Good morning," she said sweetly, pouring her tea. Her eyes lingered on Grace. "I couldn't sleep last night," she added. "It felt like someone was walking around. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" Grace kept her face still. "No, ma'am." Elizabeth smiled, but there was a new edge in her tone. "Be careful, Grace," she said lightly, stirring honey into her cup. "Some doors shouldn't be opened, especially by people who don't understand what they're stepping into." Grace's hands tightened around the dish towel. The game had changed. Elizabeth knew. The kitchen was still. Sunlight filtered through the high windows, warming the marble counters, but Grace felt cold. She reached for the kettle, her hand steadying, until she sensed it. That presence. Elizabeth entered like a shadow in silk. She said nothing at first, just leaned against the counter and watched Grace with eyes too calm. "You make good tea," she said finally, voice low. "I can see why the children like you." Grace didn't reply. Elizabeth took a step closer. Her tone softened, dangerously sweet. "You want to protect Cody? That's sweet. Really. But let's not forget something, Grace." She paused. "You work for me." The words landed like a punch. Grace froze, hand still around the mug. Elizabeth's gaze didn't waver. "You do your job, keep your head down, and maybe, you don't get caught in the crossfire. Understand?" Grace opened her mouth, but no words came. Elizabeth smiled and slipped out the back door, leaving only the faint trace of perfume and poison in the air. The story should have ended there, but the lies were just beginning. That evening, Chase stormed into the hallway, phone in hand. "What is this?" he snapped, shoving the screen toward Grace. A tabloid headline screamed, "Buffet billionaire's nanny neglects children while chasing personal fame." Photos, twisted angles, Cody crying on the lawn, from the day Grace had pulled him from the basement. Where did these even come from? Grace asked, her voice tight. I don't know, Chase muttered, rubbing his forehead, but they're spreading fast. In the corner, Elizabeth stood silent, sipping a glass of wine, eyes full of sympathy. Too much sympathy. She wasn't even pretending to hide it anymore. Cody barely slept that night. He thrashed and cried in his dreams, whispering things Grace couldn't always understand. Don't leave me. Daddy doesn't want me. She said I'm a mistake. Grace held him tighter each time, and each time she prayed, Father, cover this child in your light. No evil formed against him will prosper. In Jesus' name, protect his mind, his spirit, his heart. The next morning, Sophie, Chase's quiet teenage daughter, approached Grace in the hallway. She told him, Sophie said, her voice trembling. She told Cody that once she marries Dad, he won't be needed anymore. That there'll be a new baby. A better one. Grace stared at her, stunned. You heard her say that? Sophie nodded. She said kids like Cody don't survive in grown-up houses. That he's soft, broken, a burden. Grace's stomach turned, her vision blurred. This wasn't about jealousy. It wasn't just manipulation. It was warfare. And Elizabeth wasn't waiting anymore. She was accelerating. Grace looked toward the staircase, where Cody was sitting quietly, clutching his stuffed fox, his eyes vacant, his soul retreating. If she didn't act soon, she'd lose him. They'd all lose him. The mansion slept, but Grace's spirit was wide awake. She moved like a shadow down the west hallway, heart thudding in her ears. Elizabeth's private sitting room had always been locked, until tonight, when someone forgot to secure the latch, or maybe God opened it. Inside, everything was pristine. Velvet curtains, expensive books untouched, a faint floral perfume in the air. Grace hesitated, then spotted a lacquered box tucked beneath the settee. Locked, but she had seen this kind of lock before. She reached for the tiny key pinned to Elizabeth's calendar in the kitchen that morning. For emergencies, she'd said. The key slid in. Click. Inside, velvet-lined compartments. Letters. A flash drive. And, taped to the inside, a basement key. The basement was darker than she remembered. She moved fast, past the crates, to the back wall. She ran her hand along the molding, and found it. A panel, slightly raised. It opened with a push. Inside, a metal drawer. She unlocked it and pulled it open. Her breath caught. Forged passports, all with Elizabeth's face. Different names, different countries, different lives. Under them, tablet, already powered off. She turned it on and sifted through recently deleted messages. She's getting too close. May need to remove obstacles sooner. The child will not be a problem. The sedative works. Keep the maid compliant or discredit her. Grace's hands shook as she opened a folder beneath the tablet. Photos of Cody. Sleeping. Different angles. Different nights. All taken from the doorway of his room. At the bottom, a handwritten list. Behavior correction schedule week 1. Isolation week 2. Food restriction week 3. Emotional withdrawal week 4. Compliance or intervention. And then, at the very back, a small vial, labeled sedative child dosage. She staggered back, tears brimming. This isn't just abuse, she thought. This is planned destruction. She fumbled for her phone and snapped photos of everything, then attached them to an encrypted email. To Detective Ramos, subject, urgent, Elizabeth Lancaster body. Please don't ask how I found this. Just trust me. Cody's in danger. We all are. She hit send. Then, footsteps. Grace spun. Elizabeth stood halfway down the stairs. A silk robe hung from her shoulders, but her expression was stone. "You should have stayed out of this, Grace," she said, voice flat. Grace clutched the drawer behind her. Her pulse roared in her ears. Elizabeth took one slow step forward. "I warned you," she whispered. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Grace bolted past her, up the stairs, heart pounding. She didn't stop to look back, because this wasn't about suspicion anymore. It was about survival, and the war had just gone public. The morning headlines hit like a hammer. Buffet family nanny spirals, obsession, delusions, dangerous behavior. Photos of Grace, taken without her knowing, plastered across every gossip site. Her holding Cody, her praying over him. One even caught her standing in the hallway in the middle of the night, blurry and wild-eyed, spun into madness. She stared at the screen, numb. Elizabeth sat at the kitchen island, swirling her coffee like she'd won a bet. "It's tragic," she sighed. "Mental health is such a delicate thing." Grace couldn't breathe. By noon, staff avoided her eyes. Whispers followed her through the house, like shadows. Chase found her by the sunroom, tension carved into his brow. "Grace, what is going on? The media, these pictures. Why are they saying you're obsessed with Cody?" "I'm being framed," Grace said, stepping closer. "Elizabeth, But Elizabeth appeared like smoke, 2 glasses of wine in hand. "Here," she said gently, pressing one into Chase's palm. "You're stressed. Sit with me." Chase took a sip. Grace saw it too late, the shimmer of powder not fully dissolved. "No," she said, stepping forward, but Chase's eyes had already dulled. He blinked at her, confused. "Grace, maybe you should take some time off." "Please," she begged. "She's playing you. Just listen." But his gaze drifted past her, unfocused. Later, in the nursery, Cody wrapped his arms around Grace's waist. "Don't go," he whispered. "Don't let her take me again." Grace knelt down, her voice trembling. "I won't. I promise you. I won't let her hurt you." That evening, Elizabeth cornered her in the hallway. No cameras, no smiles, just venom. "Step out of line again," she hissed. "And he goes back in the basement permanently. And this time, no one will find him." Grace broke. Tears flooded her vision as she stumbled into the chapel room Chase's late wife used to pray in. Dust coated the pews, but Grace collapsed anyway, hands clenched tight. "God, I can't. I don't have anything left. She's too powerful, and I'm just one woman." But deep in her spirit, she felt it. "You're not alone." She breathed, sat in the stillness, and then her phone buzzed. A message from Detective Ramos. "I believe you. I'm on my way. Don't let her leave your sight." Relief swept through her. Finally, a lifeline. She ran to the hallway, too late. Cody's room was empty. The closet door half open. The window unlatched. His stuffed fox lay on the floor. Grace picked it up with shaking hands, heart shattering. "No, no, no." From behind her, Elizabeth's perfume lingered, but the woman was gone, and so was Cody. The scream pierced the silence. Grace dropped the laundry basket and ran, her feet barely touching the stairs. Cody's voice, high and broken, echoed through the mansion like a soul crying out for rescue. The basement. She threw open the door and flew down, her breath catching in her throat. Elizabeth stood in the shadows, hair wild, her silk robe streaked with dust. One arm was wrapped around Cody, the other raised, a syringe gleaming in her fist. "You should have walked away," she snarled, eyes blazing. "Let him go." Grace shouted, stepping forward. Elizabeth tightened her grip on Cody. He whimpered, twisting in her arms. "This is what's best for everyone. For Chase. For the family. He needs to be controlled." "No," Grace said, voice trembling but clear. "He needs to be loved." With a cry, she lunged. The two women collided, crashing to the floor. The syringe skidded across the concrete. Cody screamed. Elizabeth clawed and kicked, fury spilling from her lips. You ruined everything. You think he wants you here? You're a maid. A nobody. Grace grabbed her wrist as Elizabeth scrambled for the syringe. Don't touch him. They struggled, scraping across the cold basement floor. Grace's arms ached, her heart pounding like a war drum. Suddenly, footsteps thundered down the stairs. Grace! Chase's voice echoed. He froze mid-step. Before him, Cody trembling in the corner, Elizabeth on the floor, the syringe inches from her hand, and Grace blocking her path, panting, bruised, blood on her knuckles. Help me! Elizabeth cried, her voice shattering. She's lost her mind. Then Cody spoke, voice shaking. She tried to hurt me, Daddy. Elizabeth's face twisted. He's the problem, she screamed. He's ruining everything. He's weak and spoiled and broken. He needs to be fixed. He needs... Freeze. Detective Ramos barreled in, gun drawn. In a heartbeat, two officers followed and pinned Elizabeth to the floor. She thrashed, screamed, spit. Her mask had finally shattered. Chase stood frozen, watching the woman he nearly married be dragged out in handcuffs. Then his eyes met Cody's. Son! Cody didn't move, but he ran to Grace, threw his arms around her waist, and buried his face in her chest. She held him tight, her whole body trembling. Thank you, Lord. Thank you. The basement pulsed with sirens, shouting, sobs, but in her arms, Cody was safe. Detective Ramos crouched beside them. We've got her. You did good, Grace. Real good. Grace just nodded, holding the boy tighter. It was over. The nightmare was ending. But the healing? That was only just beginning. The mansion felt different now. Not because the furniture changed. Not because Elizabeth was gone. But because the air had changed. The windows stayed open. Light poured in. Laughter echoed down hallways that used to carry only whispers. It felt like someone had finally opened a door to let the darkness out. Cody played again. Sophie smiled again. Even the staff began to hum softly as they worked. And one quiet afternoon, Chase found Grace in the garden, pulling weeds with her sleeves rolled up and her hair pinned back. I owe you more than an apology, he said gently. Grace looked up, her hand still in the dirt. You trusted your gut, he said. You saw what I didn't want to see, and you protected my son, my family. He crouched beside her. I want to offer you something, he continued. Not as an employer, as a man who almost lost everything. Be part of our healing. Not just the kids. All of us. Grace smiled faintly, wiping her hands on her apron. You don't have to give me a title, she said. I'm already where I meant to be. Therapy sessions began the next week. Gentle, patient, honest. Cody drew pictures of foxes and safe places. Sophie started writing music again. Chase went back to church for the first time in years. And Grace, she stayed, not just as a caretaker, but as a presence. A steady flame in a house that had once been consumed by shadows. One night, the rain tapped softly on the windows as Grace tucked Cody into bed. His fox, now stitched and whole, lay beside him. He looked up at her, sleepy-eyed. You saved me, he whispered. Grace smiled and kissed his forehead. No, sweetheart, she whispered back. We saved each other. She stayed there until his breathing slowed and peace washed over his little face. The kind of peace that can't be bought or borrowed, only built. Later, as Grace stood in the hallway with the night settling around her, she thought of all they'd lost. But more than that, all they'd found. Hope, redemption, love not born of blood, but of choice. She looked down at her calloused hands, the apron strings around her waist. No medals, no spotlight, just quiet courage. Because sometimes the bravest battles aren't fought with swords, but with bedtime stories, whispered prayers, and one small voice refusing to give up. And sometimes the strongest warriors don't wear armor. They wear Maid uniforms, and they change the world, one child at a time.
If this story touched you, don't leave without liking this video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, share your thoughts in the comments, and tell me what kind of story you want next. Your support means everything.